Today we're talking high-end luxury, ultra-luxury real estate, joined by an expert up on the North Shore, Lanse Robb from Landvest. Lance, thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely. Enjoy it.
You've been in real estate for over 30 years, sold a lot of homes.
Yep.
You focus on a niche that's very unique, very small part of the market, big numbers in that high-end luxury. It's a completely different sale than your typical home.
Yes, it is. Very much so. Yeah. You're selling something that no one needs. They want it, and you have to figure out, how do I get them to buy it? And what does it take? And in most cases, it takes years.
And that's what's crazy. It's a completely different sales process. It's a lot, right? It's not going in and staging a typical 4 to 8 room home. You're talking about estates 5, 10, 15 million and up, even up on the North Shore. People don't realize those homes are there, but they're hidden usually in a nice pocket overlooking the ocean.
Most of the houses on the North Shore, not necessarily in Boston or West, were done and decided on and built at the turn of the century. So when the great wealth came from Boston, that's where they went. And they chose the best spots, generally speaking, and they built big houses. And so that's our base we're working from.
In today's market, I feel like there's a little bit of a transition. Everybody's looking for small and efficient homes. How does that impact that higher end market?
Very good question. It is impacting it, whether we like it or not. Small is the new big, and that's sort of the mantra that we're following. The millennials like their homes smaller, move in the right location, and do not want a lot of capital expense or continual, high taxes and whatnot. They want it efficient.
So how do you sell that? I mean, is it something that there's always a buyer for that home? Do you typically see it for the older generations, or are there young millennials out there grabbing some of these homes?
The millennials generally like the smaller places and don't see the value in the larger ones. But there always is somebody who has to have the big estate, the private estate, the place on the water. And those are the ones that are generally larger. And the gentrification of the North Shore started probably in the 80s with the tech boom. A lot of the houses got built and renovated. There's still a few originals left, but not many. And so if you want that experience, you have to have a larger house at the moment. When the smaller houses come up, they get sold very quickly. So smaller meaning 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, which is bigger than my house. But that would sell if it was in the right location for a very high price, $5, $6, $7 million, even though it's smaller. And I recently sold a 12,000 square foot house on the water, 4 acres, for $4.1 million. Because of the lack of people that wanted to live in a large house like that or be responsible for it.
You think we'll get to a point where they'll turn and look at these properties and say, listen, we got 4 acres, the home is 15,000 square feet, let's wipe it out and dice it up, and the town will look at it differently. Right now they don't want to do that, a lot of the towns, but that might change the game. If
properties in prime locations can be subdivided, they will be, unless the owner is decided that they're able to reduce the buildability and take a tax deduction for the building lots, which is rare. What you're finding is a lot of these large houses will get torn down. That the ones that are not fully renovated will be replaced with something more modest, but totally buffed out.
Just makes sense, right?
That's what people want, and if they can afford to do it, I'm working with a client who's willing to take down a 10,000 square foot fully renovated house to build what he wants on that site, which will be probably 5,000 or 6,000. And financially that doesn't make sense, but emotionally it does for him because he can.
And people at that level, right?
They can do what they want. So, and it's location, right? So the best sites are the best sites and they remain the best sites. So if you want it, this is what you have to do.
Flipping to the sale of an ultra luxury property, we have a lot of real estate agents come through here, and everybody wants to sell the big sale in town, right? Yeah. It's not always everything that's cracked up to be number one. Number two, it takes a lot of skill. A lot goes into it. It takes a lot of things, actually.
Well, first you got to get the trust of the seller, and you don't get the trust of the seller without having a track record and a brand and a recommendation. They ask around before you put on $14 million house. They've already Googled you. They already know you from wherever, from their relationships. You have to make it through that first, and then you get asked to the table. Sometimes you're pitted against other brokers, and sometimes you're not. But the net is, they want to know what you're going to do for them, both locally and internationally. And, TV shows or at, Wall Street Journal, or what's your social media footprint? What are you going to do for us? What's new and cutting edge? Because if you don't have that, they're less excited. I am finding that, we have a pretty good resume, Landvest. We have about $600 or $700 million that we've done. I've done personally, and we had a $72 million year last year, which was great. Some people think that's important, and some don't. Some are willing to say that's great, but what are you going to do for me? That's great. You have the experience. Show me how you're going to do it for me moving forward, not what you've done in the past. So that we're finding that that's becoming the new trend, which is very interesting. Used to be, track record sells all. Well, it's not anymore.
And when I said it takes a lot of things, one of those things being cash.
Money.
Yeah, cash out of pocket.
That's right.
A lot of people don't realize that. You're investing in a sale like that.
Emotionally and financially, and it's a front-loaded business. I don't know how other firms work, but Landvest is basically will front-load the expense, in most cases, not all, for the marketing of it. So just to press the button to get it online is $3,000, and your ad budget's usually 10 to 20 grand. And if you hold it for 3 years or 2 years or 4 years, I've had one for 6 years, it could run up to $70,000. So you're out $70,000 with no guarantee of selling the property. You could have a recession, someone could die, or they don't continue your contract. And those are the risks, and it gets very expensive. So you basically better have a good feeling whether you can sell this property, both emotionally and financially, with this person. You are working with them. You're in their living rooms, you're in their bedrooms, you're talking to them all the time. It's a relationship, and it's a front-loaded one. So it's a very, very dangerous one if you don't succeed. You'll be out of business.
For the average person sitting there saying, $14 million sale, they're kind of licking their chops like, what did he really do to deserve that? There's a lot that goes into that, right?
20 years of business or relationships, but it's just like anything else. The commissions are lower, your expenses are higher, and your time commitment of your team and your firm is higher. So how many of these can you do? You have to pick and choose the ones that you feel are best for, obviously what's the best for the client, because client's first. Can you do this at an A+ level and not, water down what Landvest in this case does? And can we get it done? And I'm a principal in the firm, so I have a vested interest in being successful and efficient. So there's a fine line on what you take and what you don't take, and what you promise and what you can't produce.
Landvest definitely has a great brand here in
It's a good brand.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Well known on the high end. Let's talk about recent tax code changes. Do you think that will have a significant impact on that higher tier of real estate?
Very, very good question. As we know, the basics on it are you're capped at $10,000 on real estate taxes, number one. And number two, you can deduct interest up to $750,000 of your mortgage. There's no home equity line deduction anymore, which is big.
Yep.
So,
and the loan went from $1 million to $750,000.
Yeah, it went down from $1 million to $750,000. So the net is, until the market becomes flooded with new listings and nothing selling, the tax law probably won't affect people buying. Right now, it's a tight market in most markets. From 500 to 1.5 million, it's very, very active in almost every community I know of. On the high end, there's not a lot of listings. On the North Shore, there's only 4 or 5 listings above 4 or 5 million. That's not a lot. It's tight, so the tax law is not even being discussed. But if we have a recession, God forbid, and things change, the tax law implications will definitely have an effect on the values of the house. No question about it, because if it costs more for you to own it, you can't pay as much, and everything moves down, and in turn, the values of those houses will decline.
Immediate forecast, I know you don't have the crystal ball, but 2018?
I think we're fine.
How are we looking?
I think we're fine. I think we're in really good shape as long as we have some inventory. So please, sell your houses, give us something to sell, because that's what we need to do. If we have an inventory, it will continue. Even if we had a recession starting tomorrow, there's an 8-month approximate lag for the effect on the marketplace. So we should be good for at least 8 or 9 months.
There it is, coming from an expert. Thank you, Lance.
Absolutely.
And if you're in the market to sell your high-end home and would like to connect with Lance and their team directly over at Landvest, you can go to his website, lanserobb.com. That's Lance with an S, 2 B's.
It is. Yes, it is.
And remember, we have more real estate tips just like this one right here on boston.com.